It's obviously Shanks. It's the exact same shaded sitting on a cliff drinking scene we had after Whole Cake Island. Alright, let's talk Shanks. A lot of people have been saying this name, and I don't think it's 100% out of the question for this silhouetted figure to be Shanks, but I do think it's very unlikely, and I think that for reasons. Firstly, in his favor, yes, this is a very classic Shanks pose, and the figure appears to be drinking a very classic Shanks drink, and very importantly, the figure is drinking with his right arm, which is the only one that Shanks still has, so that's very relevant to note. And I think the idea is that the thing that looks like a spherical hat is actually Shanks's insanely large collar. It's quite big, and this would be one of the better locations for Shanks to catch up with Luffy. It's assumedly friendly territory, and Luffy is now more or less equal to Shanks. He's a great pirate and such, so their agreement could be considered technically fulfilled, but I don't know if technically is good enough, because here's why I don't think this is happening. Throughout the short time we got on Elbaf with Shanks, he and his crew were repeatedly talking about how they were about to leave. Shanks hears the news that Eustace Kid has rocked up, and he says, oh, bad timing for him because we were about to set sail. Meaning that if Kid had been here even an hour later, then they wouldn't have clashed and the bad things wouldn't have happened to him. Shanks also referred to Elbaf as a pit stop when his Grand Fleet was surprised they were leaving so quickly. And so all indications point to Shanks being in a bit of a hurry to move to his next destination. So I don't think he's just casually chilling on Elbaf considering all of the urgency we previously saw. And I also don't think that he would just wait for Luffy to rock up, because really the onus should be on Luffy to catch Shanks. That's what a truly great pirate would do. And right now Shanks is still one step ahead of Luffy. So for Luffy to be deserving of returning the straw hat, he needs to be on equal footing to Shanks, which he is currently not. He is a step behind. They are not equal. And you know, one reason why Shanks may have this sense of urgency may have also been revealed in that same chapter. The doctor of the Red Hair Pirates reported that Blackbeard had just left Hachinosu, to which Shanks replied that he was sure Blackbeard was going to show up on Wano, and that's most likely why the Red Hair Pirates sailed past Wano, ready to intercept Blackbeard should he do whatever Shanks predicted he was going to do, which he didn't. So as is traditional with One Piece, Shanks is laser focused on Blackbeard, and he's trying to make a move to intercept Blackbeard's moves. It's like a complex game of pirate chess, except Blackbeard doesn't even realize he's playing. Blackbeard would appear to be fatesomely avoiding Shanks thanks to whatever blessing is granted to him by the almighty D. Although to Shanks' credit, there's a lot of reasons to assume that Blackbeard would strike Wano. One would be assuming that Blackbeard knows about Pluton. Blackbeard has also been gathering the mystery cubes, and Shanks probably knows that the ancient weapon is there from his time with Roger. But Blackbeard has also been gathering devil fruits, and it's a fairly reasonable idea that he would use this opportunity to target Kaido and acquire his dragon fruit, much like how he took the opportunity to take Whitebeard's powers during Marineford and tried to take Bulwer Hancock's abilities. Plus, it's also well known that Kaido had a road poneglyph, which Blackbeard would need and does now have thanks to his encounter with Law. So whether it be intentional, luck, or by fate, Shanks keeps getting outplayed by Blackbeard. What makes me excited though is the thought of why Shanks stopped at Elbaf, because he wasn't expecting to see Dory and Broggy there. That was a pleasant surprise. However, if Shanks did know the silhouetted figure and that person was, say, Scopper Gaban, then this pit stop would make a ton of sense. Shanks has declared that it is time to claim the One Piece, so on his way to doing that, Shanks stops in on Elbaf to check in on his elderly crewmate. Shanks says, mate, the time has come, and Gaban wishes him all the best in fulfilling Roger's legacy. I should say that I'm not all in on Scopper Gaban. It really could be any number of characters and even someone we have yet to meet. However, we are starting to run out of time for someone of Gaban's weight to enter the story and have a profound effect. So right now, I don't know, seems like a good opportunity, but what do I know? I'm just a man on the internet. And while we're here, a lot of people seem to currently believe that Elbaf is part of Shanks' territory, and that's why he was there, as it comes under the purview of his very Scarlet Empire. But I don't think that he would either want or dare to try and claim Elbaf. The Island of Proud Warriors isn't simply going to submit, and they have no reason to. The world government can't mess with them, so they don't need the protection of an emperor in the same way that locations like Fishman Island did. Shanks also doesn't tend to recruit strong people, at least not for his extended forces. His Grand Fleet are composed of weaker individuals that he's protecting. Man on the internet, have you heard the theory that the man Crocus is talking to is Golden Lion Shiki? I sure have. I've been hearing it ever since that chapter cover first came out back in the ancient days. It's been a long time now. Shiki was suspect number #1 back in the day because he was one of the few characters who had a distinctly Japanese aesthetic. This is a bit difficult to comprehend now, but before Wano, there were not a lot of those. And when the official digitally colored manga came out, people lost their buttholes because the outfit and the color scheme did match GoldenEye Shiki almost perfectly, with the one logistical issue being that Shiki probably isn't capable of wearing hats due to the steering wheel lodged in his head, which can't ever be removed, or else he will be removed from life. And look, it's exciting and everything because you see the colors and you go, oh, it's gotta be him. But my personal theory as to what happened here is a bit boring. And what I think is that whichever employee was charged with coloring this saw the outfit and thought, mate, that looks a little bit like Shiki, and so the figure was given his color scheme. I pointed this out in the last video as well, but you really cannot put too much, if any, stock in the official digital coloring. If it's not Oda's direct coloring, it's not canon. Because a lot of the time, the colors inevitably change. I used the example of a hero in the last video, but another great example is Prince Gru, who made his first appearance as a minor figure during Capone Gang Beiju's cover story, but when it was time for Gru to actually get involved in the story, Oda's color scheme was entirely different from what the original color artist had chosen for him. And so I know a lot of people are still pointing to this Crocus figure as being the Shiki, and look, Shiki, he's a pretty important dude. Member of the Rocks Pirates and first publicly known person to escape Impel Down. There was technically someone before him, but no one knows about that. But I think that Shiki is done. Oda did plan to have him as a villain in the story at one point, but he was plonked into Strongworld instead, and I don't anticipate him ever returning outside of very minor references. Another idea I should mention, because this always comes up in relation to the Crocus figure, is the idea that he's talking to Calico Yorki, the former captain of the Rumbar Pirates who, oh no, caught a fatal disease and then sailed off into the sunset. Due to the One Piece rule of never believing that a person is dead unless you see the body, there's always been a semi-popular idea that Yorki was going to return at some point after fatefully discovering a cure for his disease. Much like what seemed to happen with Gin, he sailed off into the sunset and didn't die of the deadly poison he was poisoned with. Don't know how that happened, doesn't matter, Gin's cool. And that's why Crocus was being so friendly with him, not Gin, the Yorki. Because finally a member of the Rumbar Pirates has returned for Laboon, but I also don't like this idea for two main reasons. One is that it would imply that Yorki traveled all the way to Wano, or at the very least ran into someone from Wano who clothed him in the traditional garb of his or her people. And there's just a few too many dots to connect to make that seem plausible to me, at least currently. The other is that it would water down Brook's eventual reunion with Laboon because he's the one who made the promise to use his second life to fulfill their commitment to Amazing Whale. And because One Piece is a story, I think that he's the one who needs to meet Laboon first. I say first. The reality is that Brook is more than likely the only one still alive. But I don't know, maybe. Again, Gin came back, so maybe Yorki's gonna come back as well. Speaking of Gin though, I have to say we've definitely entered a new era of silhouette theories because the first person that used to be suggested for every new mystery silhouette used to be Gin. However, now that he's had his glorious background cameo in Hachinosu, oddly enough he's getting even less attention than he used to when he was just gone from the story. That's the One Piece effect. We're always thinking about the characters that we can't see. If someone's not there, it means they must be doing something important. More important than what we're actually seeing. And if we can see them, then we know what they're doing. There's no mystery. They're unexciting. So unfortunately, after his resurgence into One Piece, it is now time to put Gin to rest. My headcanon is that Morgans has a very amicable relationship with the newsbirds as a Zoan, and that's how he always gets a great scoop, because he feeds them or something. It's definitely not uncommon for people with animal powers to be able to communicate with fellow animals. Chopper can speak to pretty much any creature on land or in the sky, whilst Jinbei can communicate with anything in the sea. However, at the same time, neither of these are the result of a devil fruit. It's always because of what they were sans magical fruit. Jinbei doesn't even have a magical fruit, he's just magical. But you have to think that Morgans does have some way of communicating with his army of newsku, because otherwise, how are they going to do their jobs? These newskus are the Amazon delivery drivers of his entire empire, so he's surely able to speak to them at the very least, although it's also implied that these birds are smarter than your average creatures, because Nami complained to one about the price of newspapers in chapter 96, and the news crew looked very apologetic about the whole situation, much like a poor retail worker dealing with a very volatile Karen. And all of that is a very roundabout way of saying that a lot of these scoops obtained by Morgans could come from his network of birds, which are constantly flying all over the planet. There are very few places that his network cannot reach. I can't can't believe I felt bad for Kizaru when he was yelling at Sakazuki. He did absolutely nothing to help us, brackets maybe, but I was still cheering for him when he told Sakazuki to screw off. Again, this is just classic One Piece. You can thoroughly detest a character for any amount of time, days, weeks, years, decades, but if Oda wants to, he can flip that emotion in an instant and make you root for them. And that's one of the main reasons why I continue to believe that Sakazuki isn't going to turn out to be quite the monster we currently know him as. And I think that he'll have quite a rough past for us to contend with, not one that justifies his actions, but one that at least explains them and does evoke a shred of sympathy. As for Kizaru, someone else pointed this out to me in the comments, and I apologize because I cannot find the comment, but to whoever said this, it is a great point. Emmett/Joyboy's haki was very discriminatory and only targeted enemies, and I didn't think anything of this at first. I think I just subconsciously believed that Kizaru was the only marine powersome enough to withstand the blast. However, in an incredibly tragic turn, it could also be because the haki did not target him, as he was considered to be a genuine friend of Vegapunk. And that implication is especially heartbreaking. It's nowhere near confirmed that that's what happened, but look, it's possible. Kizaru asking Akainu if he ever killed his best friend has even more value if you consider that Akainu could not bring it to his heart to kill Aokiji. This is something I forgot to mention, and honestly, shame on me, man on the internet. You've got one job to talk about the fictional pirates, and you didn't say the thing. But this line does hit incredibly hard when you remember that Sakazuki did not have the backbone to kill Kuzan. After 10 days of vicious fight battling, Sakazuki had a moment of softness and neglected to do his duty, which has now resulted in Kuzan pledging himself to the Blackbeard pirates. So what Kizaru's saying here is such a cutting clapback. Sakazuki's all like, Kizaru, mate, can't believe you messed this one up, bruh. And Kizaru replies, yeah, well, why don't you tell me what it was like to kill your best friend? Oh, what's that? You didn't cause you pussed out? Yeah, that's what I thought. And then Sakazuki promptly apologizes. Which isn't to say that Kuzan and Sakazuki were best friends or even standard friends, or if the F word was ever mentioned around any one of them, because ever since Ohara, at the very least, Kuzan has always been thoroughly disgusted by Sakazuki. However, what they do share at the very least is the fellowship of a battlefield of justice. A part of me is still holding out hope that Edison wasn't off-screened and is actually hiding in Sentomaru's barrel. I can see him Tyrion Lannistering himself out of King's Landing, sure. And there's also a sack on the boat. But as intriguing as this idea is, I can't help but slit my own wrists with Occam's razor and say that the simplest and likely most correct answer is that we have a sack of food and a barrel of water for the long journey ahead. Sentomaru is a big boy, and big boys need to keep themselves full, so that he has the energy he needs to keep claiming that he has the world's best defense before promptly losing to everyone who puts that defense to the test. In regards to Edison potentially being alive, my feelings on this have changed over time, but right now I'm leaning that I hope not, just because of what happened in this chapter with Lilith. I really like the idea that all of the aspects now live on within her, and Lilith is now the next generation Stella. And so Edison actually being alive would, I think, undermine that a bit. If Robin doesn't do the Saul laugh on Elbaf, then we riot. Alright, so I was thinking about this the other day. That laugh, it is so powerful, so iconic. And then I started to wonder, why have we never seen adult Robin do this laugh? But it's fairly obvious because Saul taught her that laugh to use in especially hard times, as his theory is that happiness brings laughter, and so the opposite must also be true. Laughter can bring happiness. And in the case of adult Robin, she hasn't really needed to resort to that laugh because most of her time has been spent being happy for real with the Straw Hats. And that brief unpleasant period of Watch 7 and Enies Lobby was spent with Robin actively denying herself happiness, so she wouldn't have done the laugh there either. Now, before someone mentions this in the comments, I should say that adult Robin has done the laugh at least once in the One Piece anime that I know of. When Black Maria created the illusion of Saul, Robin saw him and did the dedishishishi, which was actually adorable. But I agree, when this reunion happens, I want her and all of us to do the most heartiest of dedishishishis. It'd be cool to see Sentomaru end up on Wano, then meeting Wano via the cover story, then they come together as backup in the final war. Alright, so one reason why Sentomaru ending up on Wano is a pretty solid idea is because Sentomaru is also based on the tale of Momotaro. It's been a while since we've talked about this, but Momotaro literally means Peach Boy. Meanwhile, Sentomaru literally means Battle Peach Boy. And Momotaro was a huge inspiration for the entirety of Wano, particularly with the raid on Onigashima. Onigashima is a name ripped straight out of the folklore. Momotaro himself went to Onigashima himself with his allies, a monkey, a dog, and a pheasant, all of which Oda made sure were present during the raid in some form. The monkey is pretty obvious, the dog was Inuarashi, and the pheasant was Mako. So if Sentomaru is looking for a new home and a new person to protect, then I can't help but feel that Wano is a pretty natural destination. And then we might even be able to see the clash of two Peach boys, nay, Peach men. And in regards to the cover story, with a stomach full of Oden, Yamato is now traveling to Kuri, which is Oden's former daimyo territory, when, oh no, a misdeed is encountered. Someone attempted to kidnap a woman. And we do see that someone, but not a lot of that someone. And my guess is that it's either a former member of the Beast Pirates or a former Orochi loyalist, because here's the crazy thing about Wano. The Beast Pirates consisted of 20,000 members, and Orochi himself had a force of 10,000 samurai loyal to him. So for argument's sake, let's say that all 10,000 Orochi samurai all of a sudden become good, we like them, yeah? That still leaves a whopping 20,000 Beast Pirates somewhere on Wano. They didn't all just disappear, primarily because they can't. Due to Wano's isolated nature, they don't actually have anywhere else to go. You can't just send Sentomaru in a boat your way out of this one. But to bring this full circle, if Yamato is going to perform a full Oden, then at some point, someone's gonna have to show up and play the role of Whitebeard to escort Yamato off the island and eventually deliver Yamato to Luffy, the Roger of this age. And maybe that man is Sentomaru, but also maybe none of that's gonna happen at all. I feel like I'm going crazy, because this man had like 3 other channels, lol. This man certainly does. And one of those channels is dedicated to Hunter x Hunter, which has just been announced as returning to Weekly Shonen Jump. So we've got new weekly chapters coming, and I've got a ton of Dark Continent and Succession War recap content, which you should absolutely check out over at New World Review, the link to which will be in the description.